Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Chapter 1. The Janitor and the Challenge. The 42nd floor of Hunt and Langford LLP was brightly lit, even though the clock was nearing midnight. The massive glass windows reflected the lights of Manhattan, the city that never sleeps. Mia Reynolds pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway, the steady squeak of the wheels blending with the hum of the vacuum she had just turned off. Her silver-gray uniform was stained in spots, but her bright brown eyes carried a spark of determination. And no one seemed to notice. She paused in front of the main conference room, where light spilled out from the gap under the door. Inside, voices rose in animated conversation, laughter, and the clink of wine glasses. A big deal, most likely. Mia tilted her head, listening, not out of curiosity, but because she wanted, just for a moment, to feel connected to the world she had dreamed of since she was a little girl growing up in the slums of Queens. She discreetly pulled a book from her worn bag, a law book in French, borrowed from the community library, Tech Global. The bold title read. Mia had taught herself French at 15, when her Haitian grandmother first began teaching her phrases. Now, she read it in preparation for the day her resume wouldn't be tossed out by top law firms. She turned a page, whispering the legal terms to herself as if they were prayers. The conference room door suddenly swung open. Mia startled, and the book fell to the floor. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, his dark hair neatly combed. Benjamin Hale, CEO of Hunt and Langford LLP, known across New York's legal world as a genius and as a ruthless, cold-hearted man. His icy blue eyes swept over Mia and landed on the book at her feet. "What are you doing?" His voice was low, edged with sharp sarcasm. "Sneaking a peek at company documents during your shift?" Mia bent down to pick up the book, heart pounding. "No, sir. This is my book." Benjamin raised an eyebrow and stepped closer. He glanced at the cover. "Tech Global? You, a janitor, read international law in French?" He let out a laugh devoid of warmth. "Seriously? Or are you just trying to impress someone?" Mia tightened her grip on the book. Her pride stung. She knew who he was. Benjamin Hale, once featured in Forbes under the headline, "From Nothing to the Top." She had admired him once, but now his disdainful gaze made her want to strike back. "I read because I want to learn," she said calmly but firmly, not to impress anyone. Benjamin crossed his arms, a flicker of intrigue in his eyes, like he had just discovered a new toy. "Learn for what? To mop floors more efficiently?" He turned back toward the conference room where the lawyers were still deep in debate. "Since you want to play smart, come in here." Mia hesitated. She wasn't allowed in the conference room, but his challenging look made it impossible to walk away. She took a deep breath and followed him inside, still clutching the book to her chest. The air inside was thick with expensive cologne and tension. 7 lawyers in designer suits sat around a mahogany table. Scattered papers, a thick contract, and a half-empty bottle of wine cluttered the surface. An older lawyer, Mr. Blackshan, Donovan, was discussing something about binding clauses with a French partner. Benjamin held up a hand to silence him. "Everyone, we've got an unexpected expert tonight." He emphasized expert with a mocking tone, then turned to Mia. "This girl says she reads law in French. Well, then prove it." He picked up the contract, flipped to a dense page filled with small print, and tossed it to Mia. "Translate this. If you're as smart as you think you are, do it." Laughter erupted around the room. Some lawyers shook their heads. Mia felt their stares as if she were some odd creature at a zoo exhibit. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from fury. He thought she was a joke, but she wasn't. She took a breath, set her book down, and began to read. Her voice was clear, each French word ringing like a rhythm. Clause 14. R. Party A agrees to transfer control of the assets within 90 days of signing, provided that Party B completes full payment before the due date. She paused, then looked straight at Benjamin. "But there's a problem." The room went silent. Benjamin frowned. "What problem?" Mia pointed to a line of small text. "This footnote is mistranslated in the English version. It says, if Party B fails to pay on time, Party A has the right to reclaim the assets and charge a 20% penalty. But the English version only mentions reclaiming the assets. If you sign this as is, your firm could lose millions if the partner defaults." Donovan snatched the contract, flipping pages with a pale face. She's right. How did I miss that?" He turned to the others, panicked. "Who approved this translation?" Benjamin stood frozen, his hand gripping the edge of the table, His gaze on Mia no longer held mockery. It was something else. Shock, frustration. He couldn't admit that a janitor had just saved the room from a disastrous mistake. No, he couldn't let her win that easily. "Impressive," he said coldly, "but don't think you can walk in here and act superior. Get back to mopping, girl." Mia didn't move. She met his eyes, her voice low but cutting. "I didn't come in here to act superior. You dragged me in. If you don't want the truth, don't challenge me next time." She turned and pushed her cleaning cart out, leaving behind a conference room thick with awkward silence. Benjamin stared after her, his heart beating faster than usual. He hadn't felt this way in years. Challenged, exposed by someone with nothing but her pride. A flash of memory crossed his mind. A poor boy in Ohio standing in front of his class, mocked by a teacher for dreaming of becoming a lawyer. That boy had sworn never to let anyone look down on him again. But now, standing at the top, Benjamin Hale wondered, had he become exactly the kind of man who once humiliated him? Chapter 2. The Forgotten Past. The dim glow of the computer screen cast sharp shadows across Benjamin Hale's face, highlighting every chiseled angle. His corner office on the 42nd floor of Hunt and Langford LLP was silent, save for the clicking of keys and the occasional sigh slipping from his lips. The wall clock read 2 a.m., but sleep had never been a friend of his, not since he was a boy in Ohio, working part-time at a grocery store just to afford textbooks. On the screen was an email from HR with an attached file. Mia Reynolds' personnel record. Benjamin had requested it right after the incident in the conference room the night before. He couldn't quite explain why. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the defiant look in that janitor girl's eyes that still lingered in his thoughts. "Mia Reynolds," he muttered, scanning the text. 25 years old. Graduated with honors in law from Queensborough Community College. No elite law school, no glowing recommendations from big-name professors, just a long list of part-time jobs. Diner waitress, French tutor, janitorial staff. He frowned. Queensborough, a community college. How could someone like her read international legal contracts and spot an error his entire legal team had missed? He scrolled further to the notes section. Nominated for a full scholarship at New York University School of Law, but declined for personal reasons. Benjamin paused, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Declined NYU. No one walks away from an opportunity like that unless... He opened a new tab and searched for Mia on social media. Her profiles were nearly empty, save for a few posts about mock trial competitions and one picture with an older woman, presumably her mother. The caption read, "Thank you, Mom, for always believing in me." A dull ache gripped Benjamin's chest, like an old scar being touched. He thought of his own mother, who once worked double shifts to pay for his college tuition. He hadn't seen her since the day she passed. Right before his graduation from Yale Law, he shut the laptop and leaned back in his leather chair. Mia Reynolds reminded him of himself, or rather of the person he used to be. A poor kid with nothing but talent and determination. But he had buried that past, built a new identity. Benjamin Hale, CEO. Genius. A man who let no one look down on him. So why did this girl make him feel so exposed? The next morning, Mia stood outside the HR office. Fingers tightening around her bag strap, she had been summoned for overstepping boundaries, a phrase that made it sound like she'd committed a serious crime. But she knew the real reason. Benjamin Hale. The man couldn't stand that a janitor had stunned an entire room of lawyers. She took a breath and pushed open the door. Inside, a middle-aged woman, Mrs. Ellis, the head of HR, sat behind a desk. Benjamin stood by the window, his back to them, sunlight casting his silhouette like a marble statue. "Miss Reynolds." Mrs. Ellis began in a firm tone. "You intervened in a senior-level meeting without authorization. Are you aware that this could result in termination?" Mia felt heat rise in her face. "I didn't intervene," she said, her voice calm but unwavering. "I was asked to translate the contract. If I'd refused, you'd probably be accusing me of non-compliance." Mrs. Ellis frowned, glancing at Benjamin for guidance. He turned, his icy blue eyes sweeping over Mia. "You're quite good at making excuses, Miss Reynolds, but you don't belong in that room. You're a janitor, not a lawyer." Mia clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She wanted to scream, to talk about sleepless nights spent studying law, about the rejection letters, about her mother lying in a hospital bed with bills piling up, but she didn't. She didn't want their pity, especially not his. "I didn't ask to be in that room," she said, locking eyes with Benjamin. "You dragged me in just to mock me. If you want to punish me for doing the right thing, go ahead. The room fell silent. Mrs. Ellis cleared her throat, clearly unaccustomed to low-level staff speaking this way. Benjamin remained still, but something flickered in his eyes, not anger, but curiosity. This girl wasn't afraid of him. She didn't apologize, didn't bow her head. She reminded him of a young Benjamin facing a teacher who mocked his dreams and responding with a brilliant essay. "Are you finished?" he asked, his voice low and sharp. "No," Mia replied. "If this firm doesn't want to hear the truth from a janitor, then maybe the problem isn't me." She turned to leave, but Benjamin's voice stopped her. "Wait." Mia paused, not turning around. She heard his footsteps behind her, his breath brushing the back of her neck. "You're very confident, Miss Reynolds," he said almost in a whisper. "But confidence alone won't keep you here. You'll have to prove you're more than just someone who can read French." Mia turned to face him. "I'm not here to prove anything to you. I'm here to prove it to myself." She walked out, leaving Benjamin standing there, fists clenched at his sides. That evening, Benjamin sat alone in his office, the bottle of whiskey on his desk half empty. He wasn't drinking to get drunk. He was drinking to forget. But Mia Reynolds' image kept returning. Her unwavering eyes, her steady voice. He reopened her file and read more closely. A small note at the bottom stopped him cold. Reason for declining new scholarship, caring for critically ill mother. He closed his eyes. The memory hit like a wave. At 18, his mother had fallen ill, but he had chosen Yale over staying with her. That decision had taken him to the top, but it also cost him the chance to say goodbye. Mia had chosen differently. She had given up her dream to be with someone she loved. Would he have had the courage to do that? He picked up the phone and called his assistant. "Find out more about Mia Reynolds. Everything. Family, finances, whatever you can." He hung up and stared out the window. Manhattan shimmered beneath the city lights. But for the first time in years, Benjamin felt its emptiness. Mia Reynolds was more than a janitor. She was a reminder of who he once was and who he had buried. But he wasn't ready to admit that. Not yet. Chapter 3. Invisible Barriers. The tiny apartment in Queens smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee. Mia Reynolds set a tray of food beside her mother's bed, where Lena lay with shallow breaths. "Try to eat a little porridge, Mom," Mia said, forcing a smile. Lena, her silver hair tangled on the pillow, shook her head. "You should rest, Mia. I saw you working all night." Mia didn't respond. She couldn't tell her mother that the overnight cleaning shift at Hunt and Langford LLP was the only way to pay rent and hospital bills. This cramped apartment with peeling walls was shared with 2 roommates, a chef and a nursing student. Each month, Mia counted every dollar, torn between buying her mother's medication or paying off tuition debts, but she never complained. Complaining wouldn't change a thing. She sat on the old wooden chair and opened her laptop. The screen displayed an email from Hunt and Langford, dated 6 months ago. "Thank you for your application. We have selected a more suitable candidate." Mia had applied 3 times. For intern, legal assistant, even as a secretary. Each time the answer had been the same. Without connections, without an Ivy League degree, her resume was just another ignored sheet of paper. Still, she kept applying. Hunt and Langford was her dream, a firm where the best lawyers fought for justice. Or at least that's what she used to believe. She closed the laptop and looked out the window. Queens was a blur of gray buildings and car horns. She thought back to her days at Queensboro Community College, staying up late to study international law, dreaming of standing in a boardroom one day, debating with high-profile partners, but reality had taught her that dreams weren't made for girls like her. A Haitian, American girl from the projects with no one to open doors for her. At Hunt and Langford LLP, Benjamin Hale sat in his office staring out the glass wall at glittering Manhattan, but his mind was elsewhere. Mia Reynolds, the girl with the unyielding eyes, had taken up residence in his thoughts. The report from his assistant that morning only made it worse. Mia lived in a rundown boarding house, cared for a mother with heart disease, and worked 3 jobs to stay afloat. Not only had she declined the NYU scholarship, she had also won a national constitutional law competition in her sophomore year, so why was she scrubbing floors here? Benjamin tightened his grip on his pen as memories returned. He remembered working at a grocery store, being mocked by customers for wearing torn clothes. He had sworn never to be looked down on again, and he had kept that promise, but at what cost? He had forgotten what it felt like to fight for something bigger than himself. Mia, with her fierce dignity, reminded him of the boy who once dreamed of becoming a lawyer to protect people like his mother. He stood up and called his secretary. "Schedule a meeting with Mia Reynolds today." He wasn't sure what he was doing, but he needed to see her. Not to apologize, Benjamin Hale didn't apologize, but to find out if this girl was really who he thought she was. That afternoon, Mia stood outside Benjamin's office, heart pounding. She had thought the conference room incident would be forgotten. Yet, here she was, summoned again. She knocked and stepped in. The office was vast, walnut desk, shelves filled with thick legal volumes. Benjamin sat behind the desk, his navy suit pristine, eyes as sharp as glass. "Miss Reynolds," he said, voice low. "Sit." Mia remained standing, hands clasped in front of her. "If you're going to fire me, just say it. I don't need pleasantries." Benjamin raised an eyebrow, a flicker of a smile playing at his lips. "Fire you? No, I don't waste talent." He slid a paper across the desk. "This is an offer. An unpaid apprenticeship at the firm. You'll learn from the best. Have a chance to prove yourself." Mia looked at the paper, her heart twisting. This was the opportunity she had dreamed of. A foot in the door at Hunt and Langford, but the word unpaid cut like a blade. She worked 16 hours a day just to keep her mother alive. Unpaid meant losing her home, losing everything. And the way he said it, like he was bestowing a favor, felt like an insult. She pushed the paper back. "Thank you, but I'm not accepting." Benjamin blinked, clearly not used to rejection. "You're turning down something hundreds of applicants would beg for. Do you even understand what this is?" "I do," Mia said firmly, "but I don't need charity from someone who doesn't believe I deserve it. If you think I'm only worth working for free, then you're no different from the people who toss my resume aside." Silence fell. Benjamin looked at her, his eyes no longer cold, but filled with something else. Surprise? Maybe even respect. This girl wasn't just smart. She had a self-respect he rarely saw in the legal world. He stood and approached her, his voice softer. "You think I don't believe in you? Then why am I here talking to a janitor instead of closing $1 million deal?" Mia didn't flinch, though her heart was racing. "Because you're curious, but curiosity isn't belief. I don't hate you, Mr. Hale. I just hate having to beg people who never saw my worth in the first place." Benjamin stood still, his hands clenched in his pockets. Her words hit like a punch, dragging up memories of professors at Yale who had dismissed him because he came from nothing. He wanted to say something, to tell her he understood, that he used to be her, but he couldn't. Not Benjamin Hale. Not the man who never admitted weakness. "You're very determined, Miss Reynolds," he said at last. "But determination doesn't pay the bills. Think it over. Opportunities like this don't come twice." Mia met his gaze without flinching. "I don't need opportunities from someone who doesn't respect me. I'll find my own way." She turned and walked out, leaving Benjamin behind, feeling for the first time in years like he had just lost a battle. That night, Mia sat beside her mother, reading a law book under the dim light. Lena took her hand, voice weak. "You don't have to do it all alone, Mia. I believe you'll make it." Mia smiled, but her heart was heavy. She had turned down Benjamin Hale, but did she have the strength to keep going? In his office on the 42nd floor, Benjamin stared at the offer letter, twirling a silver pen between his fingers. Mia Reynolds wasn't just a janitor. She was a reminder of the part of himself he had buried long ago, the part that once rejected pity to protect his pride. And for the first time, he wondered, could he relearn that from her? Chapter 4. The moment she spoke up. The 42nd floor of Hunt and Langford LLP was bathed in bright white light from sleek LED panels overhead. Mia Reynolds pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway, the cloth in her hand gliding over the glass wall of the main conference room. She worked silently like a ghost, but her ears were always listening, not out of curiosity, but because the legal debates and multi-million-dollar deals that echoed through these rooms were the closest she could get to the dream of becoming a lawyer. Today, the conference room was more crowded than usual. Through the slightly ajar door, Mia heard the voice of Mr. Donovan, a senior attorney with silver hair and a smug tone. He was presenting to a group of French partners, his voice full of confidence. Clause 9. 3 of the contract ensures the parties share financial risk equally, he said. Quoting from the English translation, Mia paused mid-wipe, a flicker of unease rising in her chest. She had read similar provisions in her international law textbooks, and the phrase partage de risque wasn't as simple as Donovan thought. She stepped back and checked her watch. Her shift was almost over, but she couldn't walk away. If Donovan had mistranslated the clause, the firm could lose millions or worse. Its credibility with international clients. Pulling out her phone, She quickly drafted an email to Benjamin Hale. She wasn't sure he'd even read it after their confrontation last week. He probably saw her as nothing but trouble, but she had to try. Mr. Hale, she wrote, I happened to overhear Mr. Donovan's remarks about Clause 9, sand. The English translation is incorrect. In the original French, the phrase partage de risque indicates that Party A bears full risk if liquidity conditions are not met. Please double-check before signing. She attached an excerpt from the original contract and hit send, her heart pounding. This wasn't her job. But she couldn't stay silent when she knew the truth. Inside the conference room, Benjamin sat at the head of the table, his gaze shifting across the French partners. They were polite, but visibly tense. Clearly unimpressed by Donovan's interpretation, his phone buzzed softly. He glanced at the screen and saw Mia Reynolds's name. His brow furrowed as he opened the email. By the time he finished reading, a rush of adrenaline surged through him. This girl had surprised him again. Excuse me, gentlemen, Benjamin said, rising to his feet. We need to pause briefly to verify a detail. He handed the email to Donovan, his voice low and sharp. Read this, then explain why we nearly signed a contract that placed all financial risk on us. Donovan went pale, flipping frantically through the original document. I didn't see that line, he stammered. The French partners exchanged glances. One of them asked to see the original. After a few moments of review, they nodded. This clause must be amended, the lead partner said. We appreciate your attention to detail. The deal was salvaged. The partners agreed to sign once the revision was made, and the tension in the room eased. Benjamin scanned the faces around the table, knowing exactly who had saved the day, but he said nothing for now. The next morning, Mia was cleaning the office pantry when a staffer rushed in. Miss Reynolds, Mr. Hale wants to see you in the conference room right now. Mia dropped her cleaning cloth, anxiety flaring. Had she crossed the line again? She took a deep breath and walked in. The senior legal team was seated around the table, their eyes drifting over Mia like she didn't belong. Benjamin stood at the head, dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit, his expression unreadable. Ms. Reynolds, he began, voice low but clear. Yesterday, thanks to your email, we avoided a serious error with our French partners. A $50 million deal was secured. On behalf of the firm, I thank you. The room fell silent. Mia's face flushed, not from pride, but from the stares of the others. Someone coughed. Someone else shook their head. Donovan, seated near the end of the table, muttered just loud enough for her to hear. She's just a janitor. What is this? Mia clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. She was used to condescension from teachers, employers, people who never saw her worth. But today, she wouldn't stay quiet. She looked directly at Donovan, her voice calm but razor-sharp. And yet, I did your job better than you did, sir. If you don't want to hear it from a janitor, maybe read the contract more carefully next time. A faint chuckle rose from the corner of the room, quickly stifled. Donovan flushed red, about to reply, but Benjamin raised a hand. That's enough, he said, sweeping the room with his gaze. Miss Reynolds, you may go. And just as she turned to leave, he added in a lower voice, well done. Mia stepped out, her heart still racing. She didn't know if she had just won a victory or dug her own grave, but she had no regrets. She had done the right thing, and that was all that mattered. That night, Benjamin sat in his office, Manhattan's lights glittering beyond the glass. He held his phone, rereading Mia's email. Not a single wasted word. No bragging. She had chosen to send a private message rather than call out a senior attorney in front of foreign partners. Instinctive professionalism he rarely saw even in seasoned lawyers, but what struck him most was her poise when facing Donovan. She didn't ask to be protected. She didn't need him to step in. She had fought for herself. He remembered a day at Yale when a professor had called him the poor kid in front of the class. He had answered with a brilliant paper, but deep down he had always felt the need to prove himself. Mia wasn't like that. She didn't act to earn validation. She acted because she believed it was right. He opened his laptop and typed an email to the head of HR. Develop a plan for a legal fellows program, an opportunity for candidates outside traditional channels. I want it launched this month. He paused, then added another line. Ensure Mia Reynolds is invited to participate. This time paid. He hit send and leaned back in his chair. Mia Reynolds was not just a janitor. She was a reminder of why he had once fought for justice, not prestige. And for the first time in years, Benjamin Hale felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Not for the firm. For himself. Chapter 5. Conversations under the lights. The 42nd floor of Hunt and Langford LLP was quiet beneath a sterile glow of white neon lights. Save for the isolated tapping of keys from one corner of the office, Mia Reynolds sat in an old armchair in the records room, a stack of legal documents spread out in front of her. She no longer wore the janitor's uniform tonight. She was here as a volunteer for the new pro bono legal counseling program recently launched by Benjamin Hale. She still didn't fully understand why he had invited her to join, but she hadn't said no, not for him, but for the people who needed help, people like her mother, abandoned by the system. The door creaked open. Benjamin stepped inside, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his usual CEO stiffness replaced with something more human. "You're still here," he said, setting a cup down in front of Mia. "I figured you'd quit after the first night." Mia raised an eyebrow, taking the cup but not drinking from it. "I don't quit easily, Mr. Hale, and I'm here for the work, not for you." Her tone was sharp, but not hostile, as if she were testing his limits. Benjamin let out a soft laugh and took the seat across from her. "Call me Benjamin. We're going to be working together many nights. No need to treat me like your boss." He scanned the pile of paperwork. "Have you reviewed Mrs. Vargas's case yet?" "Single mother evicted after an illegal rent hike." Mia nodded and slid a document toward him. "I've read it. New York's tenant protection laws are on her side, but the landlord has a private attorney. She needs strong representation, and we need to file by Friday." She paused, meeting his gaze. "Are you planning to let me handle this alone, or are you actually in?" Benjamin smirked, a glint of challenge in his eyes. "You really don't mind pushing me, do you, Mia?" He picked up the document and scanned it. "Fine, we'll do it together, but don't expect me to go easy on you just because you're a volunteer." They got to work. Tension lingered between them, but it crackled with energy. Mia broke down legal clauses. Benjamin countered with tough questions. They debated every detail. Mia was impressed by how quickly he absorbed complex information, but she also noticed the wall he kept up, as if he were constantly holding something back. When the clock struck midnight, they paused. Mia looked out the window. Manhattan lights shimmered like stars against the dark sky. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. "I mean this program. You're a CEO. You have dozens of lawyers under you. Why spend time on cases that don't bring in a dime?" Benjamin glanced at her, his expression briefly faltering. He stood and walked toward the window, hands tucked into his pockets. "You think I only care about money?" His voice was quiet but edged, like she'd brushed against an old wound. "No," Mia replied, turning toward him, "but you hide your real self. I see how you work. You care about Mrs. Vargas, but you don't want anyone to see it. Why?" He was silent, eyes on the city. Mia thought he wouldn't answer. But then he spoke, his voice low like a confession. "Because I used to believe in things bigger than myself. Justice, equality, all those lofty ideals. But I was betrayed." He turned back to her, his eyes shadowed. "The person I trusted most walked away, left me with debt and a lesson. Never trust anyone but yourself." Mia felt her chest tighten. She didn't press further. She knew the sting of betrayal. Though in a different form, she'd grown up in the projects where friends abandoned you the moment something better came along. But she hadn't let that make her bitter. "Then why are you still here?" she asked. "If you don't believe anymore, why not just walk away?" Benjamin looked at her, and for a moment his gaze softened, like she'd asked something he hadn't dared ask himself. "Because sometimes," he said, "like when you caught the contract error, or when you stood up to Donovan, it reminds me of who I used to want to be." He paused, then gave a short laugh to mask the emotion. "You're very good at making people question themselves, Mia Reynolds." Mia smiled for the first time without any defense. "And you're very good at dodging questions, Benjamin Hale." She raised her cup and took a sip. "But I won't let you run forever." They returned to their work, but something had shifted. Laughter started to weave through the debates. Their glances lingered a second longer than necessary. Mia began to see that he wasn't just an arrogant CEO. He was someone who used to dream like her and had been wounded by life. And Benjamin found himself drawn to how she faced the world with no bitterness, no self-pity, even though she had every reason to carry both. As dawn neared, they finished drafting the complaint for Mrs. Vargas. Mia yawned and stacked the documents. "We did good, didn't we?" she said, tired but content. "Very good," Benjamin replied, his eyes on her with a look he couldn't quite name. "You're talented, Mia. Not everyone could do what you just did." Mia shrugged as she stood. "I don't need compliments. I just want to help people like her." She slung her bag over her shoulder and turned back to him. "But thank you for giving me this chance, even though I still don't know why." Benjamin smiled, a real one this time, free of sarcasm. "You'll understand one day." He stood and walked with her. "Let me escort you to the lobby. Queens isn't exactly safe at this hour." Mia hesitated, then nodded. They stepped into the elevator together, the dim lights casting a soft glow over their faces. In the silence, Mia felt something she couldn't quite define. Not love, but understanding, as if two people who had once been lost had somehow found each other. The next night, Mia returned to the office, ready for another long shift. Benjamin was already there with a fresh coffee and a quiet smile. They didn't mention the conversation from the night before, but they both knew a door had opened just a crack, and under the lights of Hunt and Langford LLP, two hearts were slowly learning how to trust again. Chapter 6. Rumors and Confrontation. The 42nd floor of Hunt and Langford LLP, once a beacon of hope for Mia Reynolds, now felt suffocating under the weight of hushed whispers and furtive glances. She pushed her cleaning cart down the corridor, trying to ignore the sensation of eyes on her back. Ever since that night working alongside Benjamin Hale on the pro bono legal program, Mia had noticed a shift in the office atmosphere. Administrative staff avoided her gaze, and a few senior attorneys murmured behind her back as she walked by. She wasn't naive. She knew exactly what they were whispering about. That morning, when Mia picked up her schedule from HR, Mrs. Ellis handed her a slip of paper with a cold expression. "You've been reassigned to clean the basement starting today," she said. Offering no further explanation, Mia gripped the paper, her chest tightening. The basement. Home to old files, broken equipment, and not a single window. It wasn't a job. It was punishment. She turned to ask why. But a cutting voice echoed from the corner of the room. "Oh, don't look so surprised, Reynolds. Not everyone climbs the ladder by getting cozy with the boss." Olivia Langford stood there, arms crossed, her golden hair gleaming, and her smile sharp as a blade. A senior attorney and Benjamin's ex, the source of the rumors. Clearly that Mia had slept her way into visibility. Mia felt her face flush, but she kept her voice steady. "If you have proof, bring it. Otherwise, don't waste my time." She turned and walked away, but Olivia's words stayed with her, echoing in her mind. This wasn't just gossip. It was an attack on everything Mia had worked for, on her dignity. The basement was musty and dim. The smell of mildew from aging documents clung to the air. Mia worked in silence, her pride slowly eroding with each sweep of the mop. She had rejected Benjamin's pity, had stood up to Donovan, and yet here she was, pushed underground, as if everything she'd done had meant nothing. She began to wonder if she should give up, not on her dream, but on Hunt and Langford, a place where she'd never be seen as an equal. Back on the 42nd floor, Benjamin Hale stood at the window, jaw tight as his assistant delivered the news. "Rumors about Miss Reynolds are spreading fast," the assistant said. "People are saying she got close to you for special treatment. The board met this morning. They voted to reassign her to the basement. They're trying to send a message." Benjamin clenched his fists, nails digging into his palms. He knew exactly where the rumors had started. Olivia Langford. Ever since their breakup, she tried to maintain control in whatever way she could. But what enraged him more was the cowardice of the board. They didn't care about truth. They only wanted to snuff out any threat to their order. And Mia, with her grit and brilliance, was a threat. "Call the board," Benjamin said, voice like ice. Now, the meeting took place in the main conference room, the very room where Mia had once saved a multi-million-dollar deal. Around the table sat the board. Donovan, Olivia, and 3 other senior attorneys. Benjamin remained standing at the head of the table, hands in his pockets, tension radiating from him. "We need to talk about Mia Reynolds," he began, his voice low but razor-sharp. "A janitor who prevented a critical contract error and has been contributing to our pro bono program. So tell me, why is she cleaning the basement?" Donovan coughed, casting a glance at Olivia. "Mr. Hale, there are rumors about inappropriate behavior. We can't allow a lower-level employee to tarnish the firm's reputation." "Rumors?" Benjamin's lip curled as his gaze landed on Olivia. "I don't need to guess where they came from. But if you're threatened by Mia Reynolds because she's better at this than you are, then maybe you're the problem, not her." Olivia laughed, brittle, forced. "You're not serious, are you, Benjamin? She's a janitor. You let her into your pet project, and now the whole firm is laughing behind your back." Benjamin stepped closer to her, his voice cutting. "Are they laughing behind my back, Or are they laughing because they're terrified a girl without an Ivy League degree might be outperforming them all? He turned to the board. I'm proposing the launch of a Legal Fellows program, a formal training opportunity for overlooked candidates like Mia. If you won't back it, I'll fund it myself. And Mia Reynolds will be the first one accepted. Donovan stood, his voice shaking. This is a law firm, not a charity. We can't have a cleaning girl representing Hunt and Langford. Benjamin stared him down, voice quiet but commanding. If she threatens you this much, then maybe she should be running this place. He turned and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. That night, Mia sat in the basement, the flickering light of an old desk lamp casting shadows across the walls. She opened her laptop and began preparing Mrs. Vargas's case files. Even if she wasn't sure she'd be allowed to see them through, she hadn't given up, not for Benjamin, for herself. A knock sounded. Mia looked up to see Benjamin standing in the doorway, sleeves rolled up. The cold edge in his eyes softened. You're still working, he said, a hint of surprise in his voice. Even after they sent you down here. Mia shrugged, closing her laptop. I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the people who need me. She stood to face him. What about you? Why are you here? Benjamin stepped into the room, his gaze locking on hers. Because I want you back in the program, and because I just told the board they can either accept you or deal with me. He paused, his voice dropping. You deserve better than this basement, Mia. She looked at him, her emotions caught somewhere between belief and doubt. I don't need you to fight for me, she said quietly. I just need a fair chance. He nodded, the corner of his mouth twitching into something like a smile. Then you'll get it. The Legal Fellows program is happening. And I want you to be the first. He turned to leave, then glanced back. And Mia, don't let them make you doubt yourself. They're not worth it. Mia stood still, the dim light flickering across her face. For the first time, she didn't feel alone in this fight. But she also knew the road ahead was still long. And she was ready to face it, with her dignity intact. Chapter 7. The Letter in the Rain. Rain poured over Queens, turning muddy streets into shimmering mirrors under the dim glow of streetlights. Mia Reynolds stood in the basement of Hunt and Langford LLP, gripping a broom in her hand, her eyes burning but weary. She had endured the rumors, the disdainful stares, and the moldy darkness of this place, but that morning had pushed her beyond her limit. During the all-staff meeting, Olivia Langford, with a smile as sharp as glass, publicly thanked Mia in front of hundreds of employees. We should acknowledge Miss Reynolds, Olivia said in a syrupy, false voice. Not everyone can scrub floors and catch the CEO's attention. The room erupted in laughter, laughter that sliced into Mia's dignity like 1,000 tiny knives. The board, including Donovan, sat silent. No one defended her. She stood in the corner in her janitor's uniform, feeling utterly exposed and stripped bare in front of the crowd. She had been ready to respond, but her phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. Lena's condition has worsened. Emergency surgery required. Immediate payment of $20,000 needed. Her knees nearly gave out. Her mother was the reason she kept fighting. But now the dream of becoming a lawyer felt like a cruel joke. She returned to the basement, opened her laptop, and typed her resignation. I resign effective. Immediately. She hit send and didn't look back. The tiny apartment in Queens smelled of antiseptic and despair. Mia sat beside her mother, Lena, who lay still beneath the oxygen mask. Don't worry, Lena whispered. I'll be okay. But Mia knew better. Her mother wasn't okay, and neither was she. She had fought her entire life, from the slums to long nights studying under a dim lamp, all the way to the basement of Hunt and Langford. But today she was done. The rumors, the humiliation, and the crushing hospital bills had drained every drop of strength from her. In Manhattan, Benjamin Hale stood in his office on the 42nd floor. Mia's resignation email burned like a wound on his screen. He had heard what happened that morning. His assistant had given him a full report. Olivia's cruel jab, the board's silence, the laughter. His fist slammed against his desk, rage flooding through him. He had fought the board to protect Mia. He hadn't expected them to take it this far, and now she had given up. He grabbed his phone. Find Mia Reynolds' home address, he told his assistant. Now. Rain slammed against the windshield of his Mercedes as he drove to Queens. He had no idea what he was going to say. Benjamin Hale didn't chase after people. He didn't apologize. But Mia wasn't just anyone. She was the one person who reminded him of who he used to be. Her boarding house emerged from the downpour. Peeling paint. Rusted stairs. He stepped out into the rain, suit drenched, and knocked on the door of Unit 3B. No answer. He knocked again, louder. Finally, the door opened. Mia stood there in an old hoodie, eyes red but her stare steely. "Mr. Hale," she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and anger. "What are you doing here?" Benjamin looked past her, his heart twisting as he saw Lena on the bed, the hiss of the ventilator filling the silence. "Mia, I know about the meeting, about the rumors, about Olivia. You can't let them win." Mia crossed her arms, blocking the doorway. "When? They already did. I resigned, because I can't keep working in a place that strips me of my dignity." Her voice trembled, but she stood firm. "You don't understand, Benjamin. You're the CEO. I'm just the janitor." He stepped closer, rain sliding down his face. "I do understand. I was once a poor kid in Ohio, mocked for dreaming of law school. I know what it's like to be dismissed." He paused, voice lowering. "Your mom is sick. I can pay the hospital bills. You don't need to walk away. Come back." Mia's body stiffened, her eyes flaring with anger. "You think I'd sell my pride for money? I don't need your pity, Benjamin." She moved to shut the door, but he caught it. "Wait," he said, his voice almost pleading. "I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to give you the chance you deserve." He pulled a soggy envelope from his coat. "Read this. If you still want me gone after, I'll leave." Mia hesitated, then took the envelope and shut the door, leaving Benjamin standing alone in the rain, his eyes filled with the same pain as that boy in Ohio who once got told he'd never be enough. Inside, Mia sat at the table, hands trembling as she opened the envelope. The ink was smudged from the rain, but the handwriting was still legible, each word etched deep into her heart. "Mia, I'm not good at apologies, but I owe you one. I was wrong to let you face the board alone. You are the only person at Hunt and Langford brave enough to speak the truth, to stand tall even when the world tried to tear you down. I used to be like you, a poor boy working in a grocery store, laughed at for dreaming of law school. I rose up, but somewhere along the way, I lost my reason why. You reminded me that I once fought for justice, not prestige. Don't give up. Not for me. For yourself. You deserve to be seen. I'll fight for your place. Not out of pity, but because I believe in you. Benjamin." Mia folded the letter, tears slipping down her cheeks. She wasn't crying out of sadness, but because for the first time, someone had seen her. Benjamin hadn't just apologized. He'd opened a part of himself she knew few had ever seen. She looked over at her mother, still sleeping. Lena had always said, "Don't let the world make you doubt yourself." Mia wiped her tears, clutching the letter to her chest. She felt torn, not because of the money, not because of the offer, but because in Benjamin she saw someone who had once lost his way, just like her, and was now trying to find his way back. The rain still fell outside, but inside Mia's heart, for the first time in a long while, a flicker of hope stirred. Chapter 8. The Nameless Legal Advocate. The Manhattan housing court sat quietly beneath the muted glow of early morning light. Footsteps echoed over its worn stone floors, mixing with the murmurs of anxious tenants awaiting their hearings. Mia Reynolds stood in front of a cracked mirror in the women's restroom, adjusting a borrowed blazer from her roommate. It wasn't an expensive lawyer suit, but she didn't need polish today. She was here to help Rosa Vargas, a single mother fighting an illegal eviction. Mia clutched the file folder in her hand and took a deep breath. Benjamin Hale's letter, though left at home, still echoed in her mind. "Don't give up. You deserve this." Since resigning from Hunt and Langford LLP, Mia had spent 3 days preparing this case. She wasn't doing it for money, Mrs. Vargas had nothing to give. She did it because it was right, because Benjamin's words had rekindled something inside her. She had studied New York's tenant protection laws, coached Mrs. Vargas on how to present in court, and prepped every supporting document. Today, Mrs. Vargas would represent herself pro se, but Mia would be there beside her, handing her papers, whispering guidance. She stepped into the courtroom with steady eyes. Though her heart pounded, the room was packed, strangers filling the public benches. Mrs. Vargas, in a worn sweater, squeezed Mia's hand, her eyes anxious. On the plaintiff's side stood a sharp-suited attorney from a large firm, confidently stating, "Mrs. Vargas failed to pay the increased rent raised from $1,200 to $2,000, thus violating her lease. The eviction is lawful." Mia scribbled notes, leaning over to quietly reassure Mrs. Vargas. She knew the opposing counsel was glossing over a critical legal point. When the judge, a stern-faced man in his 50 seconds, called on Mrs. Vargas, Mia handed her the highlighted file. "Mrs. Vargas rose, voice trembling. Your Honor, I don't agree with the eviction. The landlord raised the rent without notice. She looked helplessly at Mia. With the judge's permission, Mia stood. Her voice was clear. Your Honor, I'm Mia Reynolds. I'm assisting Mrs. Vargas as a volunteer. May I clarify with supporting documents? The judge raised an eyebrow. You're not an attorney? Mia shook her head. No, sir, but I've studied this case extensively and have evidence to present. He nodded. Proceed. Mia stepped forward. Under Section 7, Article 223B of New York Tenant Law, landlords must provide at least 60 days' notice for a rent increase. Mrs. Vargas received only a text message 1 week prior. This violates that statute. Here are the lease and the message as evidence. She handed over the documents, her voice calm but sharp. The opposing attorney objected, tried to rattle Mrs. Vargas with procedural questions. But Mia whispered suggestions, steadying her. When the attorney brought up precedent, hoping to confuse her, Mia stood again. Your Honor, in Rivera v. Landlord, 2018, the court ruled that unlawful rent increases void eviction proceedings. Mrs. Vargas has the right to remain and seek damages. Her argument was precise. The opposing attorney faltered, flipping through papers in panic. In the back row, Benjamin Hale sat silently, his gray suit blending into the crowd. He had come after his assistant mentioned a pro bono housing case. He hadn't planned to approach Mia just to see her after the letter he left in the rain. But as she spoke with confidence and moral clarity, his heart pounded. Mia wasn't just brilliant. She was a natural-born advocate with the fire he had long forgotten. And in that moment, as she looked the judge in the eye without flinching, he realized he didn't just respect her. He loved her, not for her talent, but for her heart, a heart that fought for the forgotten. The judge cleared his throat. Eviction request denied. Landlord is ordered to pay damages to Mrs. Vargas. Under applicable law, Mrs. Vargas burst into tears, hugging Mia. A few spectators murmured praise, and the judge nodded at her. Well done, Miss Reynolds. I rarely see anyone this prepared who isn't an attorney. Mia smiled, eyes brimming. Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to help Mrs. Vargas. She paused, then looked out at the courtroom. And I want to thank someone who reminded me not to give up just when I thought I couldn't go on. That person knows who they are. Benjamin lowered his head, hiding the mix of emotion in his expression. She hadn't said his name, but the gratitude in her voice was meant for him. His letter had reached her just as she had reached him. He knew she didn't need him, but he wanted to be beside her, to learn from her how to live with heart again. Mia stepped out of the courthouse into the morning light of Manhattan. The sun broke through the clouds, shining on her face. Mrs. Vargas held her hand tightly, repeating her thanks. You're my angel, she whispered. Mia shook her head. I just did the right thing. When Mrs. Vargas left, Mia remained for a moment, breathing in the crisp air. She didn't know Benjamin had been there, but she felt something, his presence, perhaps, his words still with her. In the car back to Hunt and Langford LLP, Benjamin stared out the window, images of Mia flooding his mind. The Legal Fellows program had been approved, and he would make sure she was the first, not because he loved her, but because she deserved it, and because he wanted to learn from her how to believe in justice again. Mia returned to her apartment in Queens, setting the documents gently on the table. Her mother, still weak, smiled. You made me proud today, Lena said. Mia held her mother's hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. She pulled Benjamin's letter from the drawer and read it once more. She was ready to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for all the Mrs. Vargases still waiting to be seen. Chapter 9. A Chance of Her Own. The 42nd floor of Hunt and Langford, LLP, gleamed under the glow of LED lights, but to Mia Reynolds, the brightness no longer felt foreign. 2 weeks ago, she had received an email from Benjamin Hale, informing her she had been selected for the Legal Fellows program, an initiative designed to train candidates who came from outside traditional recruiting channels. She had hesitated. The memory of rumors and humiliation during the company meeting still haunted her, but Benjamin's letter, its ink smudged by rain, had reignited a fire within her. She returned not for him, but to prove her worth to Hunt and Langford and to herself. Today was her first day as a legal fellow. She sat in the training room, a sleek space with wooden tables and a wall-sized screen. 4 other candidates, all graduates from elite law schools, gave her sideways glances filled with curiosity and quiet skepticism. Mia wore a borrowed blazer, her hair tied back, pen gripped tightly in her hand. She knew what they were thinking. What's the janitor doing here? But she didn't care. She was here to learn, to work, and to seize an opportunity no one could take from her. Helen Ellis, the supervising attorney, handed out the first assignment, an analysis of a mock international contract dispute. You have 3 days to prepare your reports and present to the board, she said. Show us what you've got. Mia scribbled down notes, her mind already parsing contract clauses and legal precedents. This wasn't just an exercise. This was her chance to prove she belonged. In the days that followed, Mia worked relentlessly. By day, she buried herself in the firm's law library, poring over thick legal tomes and online rulings. By night, she returned to the apartment in Queens, writing her report under the dim desk lamp. Her mother, Lena, still weak from surgery, smiled at her from the bed. You make me proud, she whispered. Mia held her hand, heart heavy with the weight of unpaid bills. But last week, something strange had happened. The hospital had called to inform her that all of Lena's surgery and treatment costs had been fully covered by an anonymous donor. Mia suspected Benjamin, but she didn't ask. Her pride wouldn't let her. What she didn't know was that Benjamin, from his office on the 42nd floor, had quietly arranged everything. After she rejected him in the rain, he understood she would never accept charity, but he couldn't bear to watch her carry it all alone. He reached out to the hospital through the firm's charitable foundation and requested his identity remain hidden. She doesn't need to know, he told his assistant. Just make sure her mother gets what she needs. He didn't do it to win her over. He did it because he believed she deserved the freedom to chase her dreams without being crushed by the weight of survival. Benjamin watched from afar. Reading Ellis's weekly reports, Mia asked the toughest questions, spotted a clause's flaw the others missed, and worked with a level of focus that left Helen Ellis stunned. Benjamin was proud, but it was more than that. He didn't just want her to succeed. He wanted to be near her, to learn from the resilience and heart she carried like armor. Presentation day arrived quickly. Mia stood in the firm's main conference room, the very place she'd once been humiliated by Olivia Langford. The board, Donovan, Olivia, and 3 senior attorneys sat around the table, their expressions cool and assessing. Benjamin sat at the head, navy suit crisp, eyes unreadable but quietly expectant. Mia was the last to present. She took a breath and stepped forward, report in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, this hypothetical case involves an international contract dispute regarding compensation terms. Clause 12. 4 imposes a 20% penalty for delays in delivery by Party A. However, this contradicts Article 74 of the CISG, which requires reasonable limitations on damages. She cited statutes, dissected precedent, and proposed clear amendments. Her voice was steady, precise. Olivia crossed her arms, searching for holes. But Mia had anticipated every question. I recommend renegotiating Clause 12. 4. To align with international standards and protect the company's interests, she concluded, locking eyes with the board. Silence fell. Helen Ellis nodded, scribbling notes, Donovan murmured. Impressive for someone without formal legal training. Olivia scoffed quietly, but said nothing. Benjamin stood, eyes fixed on Mia. Miss Reynolds, he said, your report will be reviewed for inclusion in real casework. Well done. Mia exited the room, her heart pounding. She had stood her ground in front of the very people who once dismissed her. But as she returned to the training room, her phone rang. Miss Reynolds, we're calling to confirm that the next phase of your mother's treatment has also been paid in full by the same anonymous donor. Mia gripped the phone, her thoughts spinning. She knew it was Benjamin. No one else had the motive or the heart. She wanted to confront him, but deep down she also sensed the sincerity behind it. That afternoon, Benjamin called Mia to his office. She walked in to find him standing beside his desk, holding a small card. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a glow across his steady expression. This is for you, he said, handing her the card. Your official legal fellow ID. This isn't a gift from me, Mia. This is something you earned. She took the card, fingers tracing the embossed words. Mia Reynolds, legal fellow. Tears threatened, but she held them back. Thank you, Benjamin, she said, her voice firm. But I know about the hospital. Why did you do it and not tell me? He blinked, surprised she had found out. He stepped closer, voice low. Because I knew you'd never accept it. But I couldn't let you carry it all alone. I didn't do it out of pity. I did it because I believe in you. And I wanted you to have the chance to fight on your own terms. Mia looked at him, torn between anger and gratitude. She inhaled deeply. I won't let you down, But I need to be clear. I'll walk my own path. I don't need anyone to lead me. Not even you." Benjamin smiled genuinely. "I don't doubt that. But if you'll let me, I'd like to walk beside you. Not to lead, but to see just how far you'll go." His eyes met hers, filled with admiration and something deeper. Mia nodded, then turned to leave, the badge clutched tightly in her hand like a promise. She was no longer the girl who scrubbed floors. She was Mia Reynolds, legal fellow, and she would prove her worth. That evening, Mia sat beside her mother, recounting the day. Lena held her hand, her eyes glowing. "You make me proud," she whispered. Mia smiled through her tears. She thought of Benjamin not just as the man who opened a door, but as someone who believed in her when she no longer could. She felt a connection now, like two hearts once lost were finally finding their way toward each other. Chapter 10. The Contract of Two Hearts. The early summer sunlight poured through the windows of the small office on the 42nd floor of Hunt & Langford LLP, casting golden rays over Mia Reynolds's walnut desk. 2 years ago, this room had been a janitor's break space, filled with worn-out chairs and the stale scent of old coffee. Now it was her private office, a symbol of her journey and the respect she had earned. Dressed in a perfectly fitted blue blazer, Mia stared at the nameplate on her door, Mia Reynolds. Her heart swelled with pride, gratitude, and a touch of disbelief at how far she had come. For the past 2 years, Mia and Benjamin had worked side by side on the firm's pro bono legal outreach program, supporting tenants like Rosa Vargas. Late-night debates under the fluorescent office lights had brought them closer. Benjamin was no longer the arrogant CEO who once mocked her. He was now her partner in work and in purpose, who deeply respected her integrity, and Mia, with her unyielding honesty and fierce heart, had helped him rediscover the ideals he had long buried. Their feelings had grown slowly through glances, shared laughter, and long silences heavy with meaning. Today Benjamin sat across from her, his gaze more serious than usual. "Mia, there's something I need to say." He paused, twisting a silver pen between his fingers, an old habit when he was nervous. "When I met you, I had forgotten who I used to be. Just a poor kid from Ohio, working in a corner store, dreaming of becoming a lawyer to fight for justice. Success made me arrogant. I thought only Ivy League graduates mattered. But you changed that." Mia's heart thudded. She had never heard him speak with such raw honesty. "Benjamin, you don't have to say all this. I know what you've done. The hospital donations, the legal fellows program. I never properly thanked you." Benjamin shook his head and stood. He stepped closer and pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket, placing it gently before her. "Read this. It says it better than I ever could." Mia opened it. Her eyes landed on the title, Contract for the Future. There was only one clause written in his crisp handwriting. Clause 1. Mia Reynolds and Benjamin Hale agree to build a future together, built on respect, trust, and love. She laughed through her tears. Of course, this wasn't a proposal. Not yet. It was a confession written in the only language a lawyer like him knew best. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice trembling, half amused. "A contract? You can't just say it like a normal person?" Benjamin smiled, eyes soft. "I'm a lawyer, Mia. I'm better with contracts than with speeches. But if you want it plain and simple, I love you. Not because you're brilliant or because you changed me. I love you because you're you. The only person who makes me want to be a better man." Mia stood, facing him fully. Her heart beat wildly. She had once doubted him, thought he was just another privileged executive. But over these 2 years, he had proven himself as someone who believed in her, even when she doubted herself. She held the contract, voice steady. "I'll sign it, Benjamin, but only as an equal partner, not an employee, not someone you rescued. We build this future together, side by side." He took her hand in his, warm and steady. "Equal partners," he repeated, smiling. "That's all I've ever wanted." And there they stood in a room once reserved for janitors, now bathed in Manhattan light, writing a new kind of contract, one sealed not by law, but by love. 3 years later, May sunshine streamed through the wide windows of Hunt & Langford LLP, glinting off a new nameplate, Mia Reynolds Hale. She had earned her Juris Doctor from Brooklyn Law School, passed the New York bar with distinction, and was now a licensed attorney. Her journey from cleaning floors to becoming one of the firm's most promising young lawyers was a testament to persistence, compassion, and unshakable integrity. She stood in her office, once the janitor's break room, and gazed out over the glimmering Manhattan skyline. But her true success wasn't measured by multi-million-dollar contracts or courtroom wins. It was in the pro bono program she and Benjamin had expanded. bringing justice to those the system had left behind. From single mothers like Rosa Vargas to struggling immigrant families, Mia had represented hundreds, pouring her heart into every case. She wasn't just a lawyer, she was a flame of hope. Her mother, Lena, now healthier, lived in a small but cozy apartment in Queens, cared for by Mia's steady income, and quietly a donation from Benjamin that Mia had eventually accepted with gratitude, often teasing him for being a secret philanthropist in a suit. Mia continued to visit community schools, inspiring students to chase their dreams, reminding them that you didn't need privilege to change the world. Today was special. Mia entered the Manhattan courthouse, not to argue a case, but to begin a new chapter. She wore a simple white knee-length dress, her hair down in loose waves, her eyes shining with joy. Benjamin stood waiting in the hallway, dressed in a sharp black suit, a rare but genuine smile on his face. They had chosen a courthouse wedding, no extravagance, no grand ballroom, just a quiet vow, sincere and deeply felt in true Mia and Benjamin fashion. The courtroom was softly decorated with white flowers and filled with only a few close friends. Lena sat in the front row, tears rolling down her cheeks. Some colleagues from Hunt and Langford, including Helen Ellis, smiled in quiet support. Even Olivia Langford was present, her sternness softened after witnessing Mia's brilliance. Offering a polite nod from the back, the judge, an older woman who had once presided over Rosa Vargas's eviction case, stood at the bench with warmth in her eyes. "We are here to witness the union of Mia Reynolds and Benjamin Hale," she began, "but I'm told they've chosen a very lawyerly way of exchanging vows." Benjamin stepped forward and pulled out a neatly folded paper, a new contract written in his familiar handwriting. He handed it to Mia, his eyes glowing with affection. 3 years ago, I gave you a contract about building a future. Today, I want to sign a new one with forever in mind. Mia opened it and smiled through her tears. Soul clause. Mia Reynolds and Benjamin Hale promised to love, honor, and fight for justice together. Always. She laughed, voice trembling. "You still can't say it like a normal person, can you?" He took her hands, his voice low but full of emotion. "I love you, Mia, not just because you're the best lawyer I know, but because you taught me how to live with a heart. I want to spend the rest of my life learning from you." Mia squeezed his hands, her gaze unwavering. "I love you too, Benjamin, and I'm signing this contract not just as a lawyer, but as the woman who will stand beside you, equal and true, as we build something better together." She signed. He signed. Laughter rippled through the room. The judge smiled. "By the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Benjamin pulled Mia into his arms and kissed her softly as their guests erupted in warm applause. Lena wiped away joyful tears and whispered, "You found your happiness, my girl." After the ceremony, Mia and Benjamin returned to Hunt and Langford, not for work, but to host a small gathering for the pro bono team. They sat surrounded by people who had become family, young attorneys, former clients like Rosa, and students from the community. Benjamin raised a glass, his gaze lingering on Mia. "To justice," he said, "and to people like Mia who remind us that the heart matters just as much as the law." Mia smiled and squeezed his hand beneath the table. Outside the window, Manhattan buzzed with life. But to her, it felt different now. She wasn't just a successful attorney. She was a dream made real for herself and for everyone who had once been left behind. This